Cliff Granger and Ethier, and we're going to discuss a little bit about some Auburn history. This is Saturday, and it's, let's see, the third month of March, and 28th day, get the day straight, 28th day, 2004.
I wouldn't be sure of the date.
Might have us here. How long have you lived in town, Cliff?
All my life. I was born in Auburn.
Okay.
735 Southford Street.
Okay.
Born and grew up there.
And when you got you eventually moved up on the hill up on Prospect Street?
You know, that was well after I was married even.
Okay. And your fifth generation?
I would say
Third generation?
third generation.
Third generation, Randy. Yeah. And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I had one brother, that's all. He's passed away.
Okay.
And that was about the extent of the family. As far as I know, my grandparents were the first ones to move into Auburn. And I'm not sure where they lived originally, but eventually they bought the farm at the top of the hill on Prospect Street.
Okay.
Hilltop Farm, as it's known now, and
Is that right?
Jeff Murray is living in there now.
And where, you were born on Southwood Street?
I was at 735 Southwood Street, the dealership is now, the automobile dealer.
Okay. Very good. Ken, you have some?
Yeah, I'd like to ask one thing. Cliff mentioned to me at one day that you had a house when you were first married on Southbridge Street, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
When we were first married, the wife and I lived at, well, it was one of the Warren houses, where CVS stands now. And when that was changed hands and they developed Goulding Drive, we moved over to where the toll house is now. It belonged to the Newton family. That was the original home of Eugene Newton, and he was town clerk for a number of years.
So you lived there until the turnpike?
Until the turnpike took the place, and then we moved, well, I moved back in with my folks for about a year, and then we bought the place on Prospect Hill.
So you've been up there
And
since?
I've been up there since '59.
Do you know the origin of Granger Cliffs?
Yes, yeah, I have pretty much of that. I just run across an article in some of the collection I've got in regards to that, and it was in 1936 that my grandmother gave the land
Oh, I'll see.
for the reservation.
Uh-huh.
And I think it's maybe around 2 acres. I'm not positive just the amount that she gave.
Is that right?
And it's the highest part of the ledges.
Yeah.
And
The reason for Granger Cliffs, I think we ought to explain a little bit, was for a picnic area, basically?
right, it was started as a picnic area.
And the cliffs, you know anything about the cliffs themselves, or you know the rock formations that are up there?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I can't say that I do.
Okay.
I know on the far end, down into almost to the Oxford line, there was a quarry.
How was that?
And you can see the remnants of that. I think that land now belongs to the Krasowskis.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
Cliff, could you tell me what schools that you went to in town?
well, I'm a little vague on that part of it as far as when they built the West Auburn, or put the addition on the West Auburn School. I know we started in when it was a one-room school.
Now that was next to Dunkin' Donuts today.
Right.
On
It's an open lot
Prospect
now.
Street. Yeah.
I see they were just working on that the other day.
Oh,
There was some
yeah.
clearing there.
Yeah.
And there was the one-room school, and then they added on 2 more. And there's some of that time that I don't remember just
Yeah.
how the schooling went.
Yeah.
But when they added on the 2 rooms in the front, it made they had the first 6 grades of the West Auburn end of the town in there.
Oh, that's great.
First and second was in the room to the west. Third and fourth was in the one to the east, and then the back was the fifth and sixth.
When
And after that, we went to the town hall for the 7th grade, and the 8th grade was into the Mary D. Stone School, and that was,
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
That's great.
did you, when you worked in the family farm, would you get out of school early in the year, or would you miss any school?
No, we didn't miss any. School lasted right up until, in June sometime, usually when it closed. And,
You walked to school?
oh yes, because we were right handy there.
Yeah.
I lived just the other side of it.
Yeah.
You walked to Mary Stone?
No, yes, we did too.
That'd be a
Sorry,
good hike.
yeah, that was a good walk.
Yeah, but,
Yeah. And then, of course, after that, we went to South High School.
oh, did you?
Mm.
How did you get there?
That, well,
Also,
took the bus on down by Appleton Road, which is where Appleton Road is now, and went into near City Hall there, Salem Square,
Yeah.
and transferred to the trolley.
Oh, back up.
And took the trolley to South High.
Wow, that's quite a trip.
It was quite a trip.
A long time,
Yeah.
imagine to get.
Yeah, we
to and
started
from
early in the
school.
morning.
Yeah.
do you mind if I ask you how old you are, Cliff? Because you're saying now that you were in town before the 35 high school was built.
I sure was. And, well, I'm 88 years old, be 89 in
Amazing.
another month.
All right.
So, and I've spent all my life in Auburn, different areas. Very familiar with Prospect Hill and that end of it, because as kids we roamed that whole hill.
Oh, sure.
Appleton Road wasn't there, and
Oh, is that right?
yeah,
Yeah.
L.O. Irish put that development in.
Did he?
Yeah, there was two farms, the Murphy Farm, which was on Prospect Street, and the Newton Farm, which was on Southbridge Street, and they abutted each other about halfway up the hill.
Uh-huh.
And he acquired them both and started the development.
Is that right?
The Murphy farm, the house still stands
The
on
house still
Prospect
stands,
Street,
but the barn is gone.
across from the Murphys that live there now, right
Right.
across the street almost, the
Yeah.
big house on the corner. Do you remember Route 20 being built in
Oh, yes.
1932? I think it was
32, yeah.
completed.
Mm.
Do you remember the cattle passes going in or anything
I
about?
sure do. There was the one that we had at the Granger's farm, and then the one at Bill Burgess's, and the one at Arthur Howell's, which was top of the hill.
Now, what was their purpose, and can you tell us a little how they were constructed? And-
Well, what it did, when Route 20 went through, it split up the property on the farms.
The pastures?
And the pasture land. And to get the cattle from, well, even, I don't think Burgess's farm had much pasture land
Okay.
on the farm side of the Route 20.
Yeah,
And the cattle pass was, well, probably about 7 foot high and 3 foot wide, which was probably a mistake because the cattle could go through, and if any of them turned around and came back through, it created a problem.
did they ever get stuck?
We had one that got stuck in there and got jammed up enough so that she was not any good anymore, and the cow was,
Wow.
they had to turn around a 3 foot area, and that cow being as long as they couldn't turn in that area.
And who would maintain it, like in the spring, would mud get in there?
No, it was on high enough ground so that it didn't have to be any maintenance particularly. We got to where we had to block it off and put the cows either one side or the other each day, and
How many of those, do you know how many of those there were in town?
there was 3.
Oh, that's three.
There are still 2 that you can see, wow, probably this much of the top.
Can you?
The one that was on your family farm, it's near the old Auburn Plaza. You can still
Yeah.
see the top of that, and you can still see the one was the Burgess farm,
You can,
the top of that one too.
Is that right?
And the other one is just completely gone.
completely covered, yeah.
Yeah.
That was at the boundary line between, well, along that goes up where the back entrance is or exit from Home Depot and BJ's. It was in that line there, followed the property line.
Uh-huh.
There was a lane from the barn, which was on Central Street. It's now Faith Ave.
Right.
And the lane went up to the pasture land, which was up in the back.
Yeah. How did you make a living when you were growing up?
That was it, working on the farm.
On the farm?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, of course, when I graduated high school, I went to work for an antique dealer in Worcester.
Did you?
Yeah, Warren Tucker.
Yeah.
And he had a place on Park Ave, and I worked there for, well, about 2 years. And then I liked to hunt a lot and fish, and when
Right.
fall came, I would kind of take too much time off. So one fall, he said, "You better take the rest of the season off." And it was, I could see his point too, because the business wasn't
Yeah.
as busy. They weren't as
Yeah.
busy during the winter, so it was to his advantage as well as mine.
Oh, that's great.
So then, after I left there, I did a shot hitch down to Norfolk State Prison as an instructor in the woodworking department.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that was a temporary setup, and of course there again it was a case of who you knew rather than
Right.
the quality of it, because I think most of the guys that were working in there knew more about it than I did. But it was interesting.
Oh,
It was
it did.
an experience in itself to work with the inmates,
Sure.
because they Well, I found that they were no different than most of us, except that they got caught.
That's true.
Cliff, we had talked one time, a lot of people know that there was a train station, it's down near Drury Square, it's Golden Pizza today, and that was on the old Worcester to Norwich line.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of people don't realize that there was also a small station right off of West Street on the Boston Albany's Webster Branch
Webster
line.
Branch.
And you told me you actually had seen it, and you told me a little bit about purchasing grain there. Could you tell us a little bit about that today?
Well, we didn't purchase grain there. The grain came in there in a freight car, and Bill Stevens and Jesse Stevens operated the grain store there in West Auburn. And I think it was originally known as Cheney's grain store.
And that's where Pools and Q's is today?
Is today, yes.
Oh, there.
Yeah. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they would unload the grain over there off the freight car and bring it over to the grain store.
Oh, that was a haul, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know, it may have been done originally with horses, but as I remember, they had I think it might have been a Model T truck.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
In that building, I don't know if it would be something you'd remember, but some of the people that were pilots in town, pilots that came out of the Auburn airport, told me that the government actually shingled the roof in Auburn in big letters.
Auburn, and I can remember the big letters up
Yeah,
there.
at no charge to the people in the building, being that there were no radios in the planes then, and pilots would wonder which town they were passing over, so they could come by and read in the shingles of the roof that was the Auburn airport.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Being close to the Auburn airport
it
at
was
the time.
right
Yeah,
across the
it
street
was.
pretty much.
Very
And,
important.
I'm sure for a free roof, people would be,
Sure.
A lot of people probably would be very anxious to get the town name put onto it.
Absolutely.
you had also told me, we're in the same area now, it's about where the sewer pumping station is today, I think on Southwood Street, about
Right.
the blacksmith shop that was there.
Yeah, there was a
Could you
black-
tell us a little bit about that?
In the corner there was a blacksmith shop. There was, well, we knew him as Young Jim and Old Jim Amiot that run the blacksmith shop. And they shod horses and did repair of wagon wheels and even built wagons for the neighborhood.
Is that right?
Yeah, and next to it, right, almost, I don't think they were adjoined, but very close, was Durant's Garage, which sat down in next to it, and then there was Adams's store.
I understand years ago, a lot of the blacksmith people turned into garage mechanics because it was a similar thing. They used to have to make a lot of their own things for cars out of the blacksmiths.
That's possible.
And so a lot of the blacksmith shop originally turned into
Automobile repair shop.
Yeah.
Well, these were two separate operations,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Durant ran the garage next to it. And they lived at 736 Southbridge Street, which was directly across from where I was brought up.
I see. Yeah.
And that's gone now. That's why the entrance to the new motel down in the back there
Oh, yeah.
goes down through what was Durant's property.
Yep.
Would you remember maybe anything that you brought to the blacksmith shop that built or repaired, or any
Wheels from wagon wheels.
the outer iron ring?
Yeah, they could build a whole works. They bought the hubs ready-made, ready cut,
Yeah.
at different sizes, and then they would put the spokes in and put a rim on it.
Depending on the size that you needed, right?
Hmm?
Depending on the size that needed.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that was a
It
process.
was quite a business, quite
Yeah.
a trade, actually, being able to build a wagon wheel.
Sure, absolutely.
I think the Amiot family was right on Rochdale Street, and I think they had a beach named after them. My folks would swim there.
Did they?
Yeah,
I know it
it's
was on
right-
Rochdale
Yeah,
Street.
it was a Lux house, and I think they've moved out of there now. There's a little garage, a little barn behind it, right on the water. I don't know. I wish I knew the street number so I could say it now. But was there any other blacksmith shop at that time in town that you
The
remember?
only other one that I remember that was later on was Terrian had a blacksmith shop on some of the property that Arthur Howe owned, which was on Central Street, now Faith Ave.
And I think he lived right at Bryn Mawr Ave Extension in Leicester Street, right on the corner there. I think.
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So they all lived fairly close to where they worked, and
What else was down on Southbridge Street when you were a boy? There wasn't as much industry as there is now.
Oh, nowhere near. There was,
Can you picture anything else being down on the Southbridge Street or where Route 20 is now in that area?
Well, starting from Oxford Heights, of course, you had to cross Oxford Heights Garage, it was known originally, and then it became Cross Brothers and Cross and Cross. The names changed from time to time, but it was the garage there, and then next to that was where Harold and Ernie Cross lived, and Charlie Cross, who was highway surveyor for years before Ray Witcher.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he lived in that, along that stretch.
I didn't realize he was that.
Yeah, and I believe Charlie Cross's wife was a Carlson, and they lived, there was a Carlson family right across the road from there. Across from, well, the New Yorker restaurant was down there for a while.
Yeah.
And now it's the motorcycle place.
Sure.
And right across from there, which is now almost all open, was a family by the name of Carlson.
When,
And then the real Canary Farm was just to the east of that.
when Route 20 was built, was there a road there before, or was
Yes,
along that
it was
stretch?
Southbridge Street.
With Southbridge
That's
Street, where they
went down
joined together
north.
right now, and then Route 20 kind of veered off to the right.
That's right.
Was that a road at the time, do you remember? Or?
Where Route 20 went in?
Yeah.
No, there was no road there whatsoever.
Is that right?
That went through a swamp, area of swampland more or less, that brook that comes down through and goes into Dark Brook.
Yep.
It goes under the parking lot where Audubon Auto is now. And then comes out, went under the blacksmith shop and down into Dark Brook, what is now Dark Brook Reservoir.
Oh,
And that area beyond Appleton Road, where Route 20 is now, was more or less a swamp area, it was a bog area.
was it really?
Yeah, and they hauled.
Down near Eddie Pond, not that far, maybe not as far as Eddie Pond.
Oh no, that was right down in the corner there where 12 and 20 come together.
Oh, okay. Is that right?
Yeah, that's where, well, there was a gas station went in there to 12 and 20 when it was first built, and then later on Dutchland Farms went in there, which was a place similar to Howard Johnson's.
Oh, okay.
And the gas station was there, well, Beauvais run that, and he had a place down, a gas station down near where Brook Motors is now.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then he moved up there when that
Yep.
presented itself.
Yeah.
And that fill, that was a tremendous amount of fill that was hauled from, well, the hill where BJ's is now and
Yeah.
Home Depot, and some of the rock, I guess, from beyond Eddie Pond went down there.
Well, it was a big project.
It was, yeah, the trucks hauled a long time to fill that area, and they didn't dredge it out the way they do now in most places. They would fill in and then put dynamite down under and blow
Is that right?
the mud out
Let us settle.
underneath, and
Is that right?
the fill would settle.
Boy, that's an interesting fact right there.
Yeah, I can remember that. In fact, I had the opportunity to ride with those truck drivers quite often that was hauling fill from
Is that right?
yeah, top of the hill down to over beyond Appleton Road.
Was it right after Route 20 went in, they put that big building where the Chinese restaurant was, where the 99 is now? Was that
Well,
put in about then?
That's where Dutchland Farms was, which was
That was the Dutchland Farm?
Mhm.
Okay, before it was a Chinese restaurant?
Right.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Right,
Cliff, you had told me something that your brother and you, when there wouldn't be a whole lot to do on the farm, you had told me what you used to do with the rocks, and I got quite a kick out of that.
Yeah, well, of course, rocks were a nuisance in the field if you were trying to mow it. And my brother and I used to drill holes in them so my father could load them up with dynamite and blow them.
Oh, is that right?
That was part of the celebration.
Wow. I guess make big rocks, little rocks out of big rocks.
That's right, break them up and then could haul them off and clear the fields.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea where the dynamite was purchased? Or
Well, I know my dad obtained it from Bill Barrows, who lived over on Auburn Street.
So you didn't need a license or anything, you could just...
No, no, I know Bill Barrows, he did some construction work. I don't know whether you would have anything on him or not.
I don't think so.
I know he was a teamster
Yes.
in town, and I know that he had a mare and a stallion, and they said you couldn't work them together. And they said that he had the best team of horses around. They'd do anything he told them to.
Yeah? Is that right?
Yeah.
That's pretty well. Good. How big was the farm up there on the hill? You're talking...
That could have been, well, I would say perhaps a couple hundred acres.
Was it really?
Yeah, because it run from Southbridge Street
Yeah.
all the way up to the cornfields that Krasowski owns now.
Is that, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And then all the way down to maybe Oxford Street or?
No, it went, there's a line, it would be the land that Home Depot was on
Yeah,
was part of the Sibley farm,
okay,
and that's what Arthur Howe owned later on.
I see.
And that line ran pretty much straight through up to the top of the hill.
Oh. And what was the barn, what was the farm, the cattle,
Cattle.
dairy farm?
Dairy farm,
And
yeah.
what was the barn for that?
That's the one that Jeff Murray has now.
Oh, okay,
The barn is still there,
Yep.
with some of it having been removed because there was a milk room that went with it because the family delivered milk in Worcester.
Oh, they're
A horse
okay.
and wagon.
Great, all right.
Could you tell us, you just kind of reminded me of something about I guess it was your grandfather that would go into Worcester delivering milk, and could you tell us a little bit about how he would get back when he was tired?
My father was the one that drove
Oh, your father, I'm sorry.
the milk wagon, and they'd go in middle of the night, deliver the milk, and on the way back, he could crawl in back in the wagon, go to sleep, and the horse would take him home.
Take them home.
Take him home. They didn't have to worry about it. When the wagon stopped, he was home.
There was advantages to horses back then.
Yeah, they depended on horses a lot in those days.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting.
Would you ever work with a team of horses? Did you know how to do,
Yeah, once I got old enough to drive them, I more or less became the teamster for the farm because I did most of the plowing and the harrowing and most of the mowing actually. And
how do you get them to go the way you want them to go and the speed?
You can steer them, and there's G and haw, G for left and haw for right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And they usually worked them as a team. Then there would be during the summer when we'd cultivate, of course, that'd be with a single horse.
All right.
How long could they, like if you started at 9 o'clock or whatever time you started, how long could you actually use them before you'd have to rest them on not on a 100-degree day, but I mean?
Well, there was usually the job would be finished maybe before they had to be
really?
rested. Plowing and harrowing was the hardest one. That was a hard job, a double disc harrow, and
Yeah.
that was quite a drag on a pair of
I
horses.
bet.
And how would you turn it around? You just make a big loop?
You make like an oval, depending on the type of field that you have, but you'd cut it in two and then gradually swing, overlap and go. I don't know just how you would term that.
What would you do? Find something at the far end of the field when you first started to get the lines? I know they made straight lines, and I could never understand how you could get a horse to go as straight as they did.
Well, that depended on the horse a good deal. We had one that was real good at that. He would go between the rows without being led or ridden or anything, and would cultivate, no trouble at all. He was a horse that could travel straight. And usually you marked out, started at the edge of the field usually, which a good many times is a straight line,
Right.
and worked from that.
Is that right? Yeah. How many cows would you have at the farm now?
Well, we usually had about 25 head and probably be a dozen to 15 milking.
Mm-hmm.
And,
At a time, yeah.
yeah.
Is that all you had? Do you have chickens too for yourself? Or?
Well, my father had chickens as a sideline, more or
Yeah,
less, and
yeah.
peddled eggs in Worcester.
Does it that kind of self-sustaining for the most
Yeah,
part?
pretty much self-sustaining as far as food was concerned.
Yeah.
As I always said, we didn't see any money, but we ate well. There was milk and eggs and whatever you needed, vegetables, and a lot of canning was done.
Just enough to pay the taxes and just
That
keep.
was about it. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's so different now. I mean, you lived off the land, that's it.
Right.
And I enjoyed it and I miss it now because you go out, you had wide open spaces,
Sure.
the fields and you could see the sky and
Absolutely.
When you cut hay, Cliff, now you did it by hand, of course.
we had a horse-drawn mowing
Okay,
machine.
and you stacked it into the tractor with the.
We didn't have a tractor.
I'm sorry, into the trailer. Wrong word.
Yeah.
With a pitchfork, you'd stack it up in there, and you'd have to get it nice and square.
On the load.
The question I'm getting to is poison ivy, and I mean that must have been.
That was something I had all summer long usually. Poison ivy you lived with.
Oh, good.
Because even if it was dried and in the hay,
Yeah.
you'd still, if you got in contact with the leaves, you still would
Is that right?
get poison ivy, yeah.
So you just kind of, that was part of life? And
Part of life, living with poison ivy.
Boy, oh boy, that must have been.
When the farm was up there, Cliff, I'm just touching on a subject that I'm a little bit interested in. right where your driveway goes down through there, that was known partly as the Hartford Turnpike. Do you know anything about that? Do you have any recollections of that? Or was
Not
there a dirt road
particularly.
there or anything? Was there anything there when you were growing up, or?
There was a cat road there.
A cat road.
Yeah, because we hauled wood out from the back lot out that road. Either that or we would go down through what Sibley owns.
Okay.
Because before Route 20 went in,
Yeah,
well, I'll go back a ways. My grandfather and grandmother sold the farm up there on the hill and built another place down where the plaza is now.
okay,
They had a large house there and a barn and cut down on the farm considerably because it was more work than they could handle
sure.
with the family. They had,
Yeah.
and hired help was getting
Right,
expensive.
right, yeah.
So they moved down, and the farm that I grew up on and was familiar with was the one that was on Southbridge Street, 705 Southbridge Street.
Mhm.
There was the house and barn, and that later went to Hallier bought it and had a tourist camp set up there.
All right.
They had, they used the main house as a, well, they had rooms to rent
Like a
there.
guest house?
Yeah, and they put up cottages.
Wow,
And then the plaza went in later on.
Mhm.
They bought it from Hallier.
but there was no remembrance of the Hartford Turnpike when you were up?
No, really nothing any more than the cat road. In fact, I would always question how they ever traveled it.
Yeah,
Because there were so many rocks and it was so rough that I don't see how it could have been much of a road.
yeah. You told me one time there was a couple of cottages up there? or
Well,
something?
I guess there were some
Some
cottages,
camp, yeah.
shacks, because Dr. Green supposedly had a summer camp up there
Uh-huh.
along the old road. And then there was another place on top of the hill that I believe a Barnett had a
I
camp.
see. And that was just a getaway place to
It was
get out?
evidently to get away from the family or the
Yeah.
daily routine.
Wow, that's pretty neat.
The cellar hole is still evident where Dr. Green had his summer camp.
Yeah,
The other one is, well, if you know where to look, you can find a few bricks maybe and some indication.
sure.
There was a long time, there was lilac bushes there which would indicate that somebody had lived there and
Oh, that's interesting. Was the pond there when you were growing up? Was any pond there, or was that?
yeah, but much different than it is now. Originally it was, the dam was, well, you can see part of the gateway or pier as you look up from Route 20, looking more or less, I would say south,
Right,
up towards what is Eddy Pond.
Right.
You can still see a square cement
yep,
pier there. And that was part of the
Oh, that was the
original
original dam?
That was the original
I
dam.
see.
And then the American Steel and Wire, I think, built the dam down further, didn't they?
Yeah, right, you can't lease them?
Yes.
On the other side of it, you can't lease them?
Created, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that it was part of the control.
American Steel, yeah,
Part of it.
water flow.
We had that for years and years before it was turned over to the town of Olive.
Mm. Yeah, because the Electric Light Company, I guess, took it in between, and they had,
Yeah, right, yeah, I think they're right.
the
Had something to
Electric
do
Light
with it.
Company had something to do with it, and when they went out there at Webster Square, there was no use of that water anymore.
Right.
Same way with Dark Brook Reservoir, that was created for water supply for the Electric Light Company.
Really, yeah,
Mm.
to get down through there. And Eddy Pond, do you remember the road that went across Eddy Pond, or that wasn't there at the time?
No, that
That
was
was all underwater?
underwater, as far back as I can remember.
Oh, that's interesting.
They claimed there was a corduroy road across there, which
Yep.
was made with logs and so on, but
Oh, there, yeah,
that's only hearsay from my
yep.
point of view.
Yeah. Do you know anything of Cedar Swamp that was down at the other end of it down here? Does that bring any recollections to you, or?
Yeah, well, that's, you can still see evidence of it as you, if you go across Cedar Street.
Right,
There's still quite a lot of cedars that grow in there, but they were a much larger tree, and when they flooded it, it killed off most of it.
back them down. You weren't able to use them for posts or anything like that? with
Well,
them, or-
they were available, I guess, for some people, but we had chestnut trees
Yep.
that we could make posts out of, and
Did
that
you
was,
make your own posts?
oh yes,
Did you?
yeah, split up the trees and
Yeah,
make fence posts.
make good strong ones.
Yeah, they last a long time too. They were probably, I would say, equally as good as a cedar.
Do you really?
Yeah, for the fence posts.
That's great.
The chestnut trees are all gone now.
And what was the fencing with, barbed wire mostly?
Barbed wire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
keep them in.
yeah.
Cliff, could you tell us a little bit about, we went up to Hillside Cemetery, you and I, one Sunday, and you were showing me your grandfather's marker for the
Yeah, for the
gravesite.
family.
Can you tell us about that?
That is a fairly large boulder that was hauled off from Prospect Hill that they evidently took off from there when they bought the cemetery lot.
Is that right?
Yeah,
They took it right off their own property?
off from
then?
their own property.
That's interesting.
But that is hearsay as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
But I am sure that must be the case because the rock is still up there.
It's a rock moving.
Yeah, and they had the name, Granger name engraved in it.
Oh, that's
It
interesting.
must be 500 or 600 pounds, I would think, and I just wondered, how do you think they would even have gotten from Prospect Street to Hillside?
I would almost think it was taken down on a stone drag because it would have been a job to get it up on a wagon with wheels, and yet they may have. It would quite a haul either way.
Yeah. You know, that's something that's always interested me. I like country roads and I like, the wisdom type thing, but the stone walls
Yeah.
and the things that you see out there, you gotta wonder how some of those stones were put in there because they were
Some of
so...
them are tremendous in size,
Yeah.
and how they're ever moved, I don't know. But
You talk about working on the farm and blowing up bigger rocks and making little ones out of them. I imagine you moved some pretty big rocks in your day.
they move some pretty good sized ones.
Cliff, could you tell us about, you call it a stone,
Drag, yeah.
could you tell us what that was? Just,
Usually it was, you had planks cut with a, I don't know just how to describe it. They had an offset and you could make the front of it headed up so that it wouldn't
so that it wouldn't dig
cut
in?
in. Yeah. And usually get planks that were 10, 12 inches wide, put 3 of them together with cross pieces,
Uh-huh.
front and back,
Yeah.
and
Roll the stone on,
roll stone onto that and then
pull it.
drag them around with the horses.
There you go.
That's the way they were moved.
Had you ever seen that done?
Oh yes, I did a lot of that too.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about your late wife? Was she from Auburn?
She was from Auburn. She was born on Central Street where Oxford Street crossed it before the time of most of us, I guess.
Right.
I remember
Yeah.
Oxford Street and Central Street crossing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what was her maiden name and how did you meet?
She was Elsie Frances Lamb. She was known as Fran mostly. And I met her, she worked at Sibley's Tea House. And I also had a couple of cousins that worked there, and through the going over there and seeing my cousins, I met
Where was
Fran.
that? Where was Sibley's Tea House?
Sibley's Tea House was approximately where Dunkin' Donuts is now,
On Route 12?
on Route 12.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was a restaurant?
yeah, it was an eating place. They specialized pretty much in chicken. That
Yeah,
was,
right.
yeah.
Wow.
So you never, she lived in town all her life and you never knew her?
I didn't know her. I knew the family,
Yeah.
and I knew her father before I knew her, actually, and I guess that was an advantage, perhaps.
Apparently it was.
What would, if you wanted to go on a date, what was around town? Where would you go? There was no movie theaters? Or?
No, I can't. At the time I went with her, I did have a car. So we could get into town and go to the movie, or we could go swimming somewhere to go to a beach, or, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
What beaches were there in town? Was that,
well, Rotary Beach was
that was there then?
that wasn't there then, but there was a place where we could swim.
Swimming, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Because prior to my meeting my wife, the gang, the Durants who lived across the road, a couple of boys there, my brother and I would go bicycle up West Street and over Rochdale Street down to
All right.
down the reservoir there.
That's a good hike too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a rope up in the tree that we could swing out on. And,
All right.
and yeah,
Do you remember a beach being down where the American Trailer Park is now? As a kid, we used to walk over there from Central Street, and it was a pay beach. It was the gentleman that owned it at the time. We used to pay, I don't know, a nickel or something like that to go.
You're on Eddie Pond now?
Yeah, it's right.
yeah, Swanstrom owned that land
Swanstrom?
for some time, yeah.
Yeah.
Before 20 went through,
Okay, and maybe, well, it was after that, the 20 was there when I was...
when you went there.
Yeah.
Well, who had that, Westermark?
I don't remember the name, I'm just curious, but there was, like I say, the gentleman used to charge us, I don't know, a nickel a piece or something like that.
I never
And the
knew
whole
they
family,
charged.
the whole family used to go over there and swim.
Yeah.
And the beach is right about where the end of the trailers are now. There was a nice
little rock pile
sandy,
there that
there
you
was
could swim
sandy,
off
yeah,
of,
there was a sandy area, and you could swim there. It was convenient for us from Central Street, of course.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's hard for me to picture the area before Route 20 went through.
Yeah.
Because I remember there was a Swanstrom family who lived on Oxford Street, and that is all gone, and they own the land down the pond, and we used to get a boat from them to fish Eddy Pond.
Sure.
And
Well, before 290 went through up there, Central Street and Oxford Street and all that, it was quite a different area up there.
it sure was, yeah.
I remember there used to be a guy come around to your house for almost anything, but there was a fish man that lived up there.
Yeah.
There was a fellow that used to come deliver fish to your house every Thursday.
I don't remember his name, but I know where he lived.
Yeah.
It was across from where the Mungers
And
family
then
lived.
at one time, before Oxford Street was in there was a place up there called the restaurant. It was a restaurant.
Castles?
No, it was the fellow that worked for the turnpike when they were building it. Was up there. Carousel.
No, the Carousel.
Carousel restaurant.
Castle was the guy that owned the property there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So that is where the Carousel was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was he was a very big man, and he was running a bulldozer when they were putting the Mass Pike in.
Like him? Oh.
And he liked the town so much that he ended up running that restaurant.
That restaurant?
At the Carousel.
You see, that restaurant, the Route 20 took out a lot of that. In fact, Route 20 didn't affect Central Street and Oxford Street as much as 290,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
395 now,
Right.
I guess it
Yeah,
is.
because there was a diner down the hill away beyond the Carousel. Wasn't there a diner?
Well,
Down by the cars.
it was a Sherwood Diner on Route 20,
Yeah.
on top of the hill, where
Um,
the Lundgren is now.
yeah, I remember that. There was a hotel.
And a motel and a
There was
diner.
one between there and where the castle was. There was another diner in there. I don't remember if anybody remembers the name of it or exactly where it was, but it's just, and again, that was before 290 went in, because I think 290, it's just about where 290 is now, where that diner was.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if there was any.
I didn't remember other than the castle.
Uh,
Of course, it was a Flying Yankee down to
Yeah,
12 and 20 come together.
yeah.
And there was two big diners actually, the Flying Yankee and the New
In
Yorker.
New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
Those are the ones I went to when I was a boy.
So,
Cliff, could you tell us about the street that you said was right about where the turnpike bridge is on West Street today?
yeah, it happened to run across my mind the other day because the picture I saw with the Lawrence boy in it, I remember the Lawrence family living there. And just as you went under the bridge for the Branch Railroad, there was a road off to the left. And there was two houses on there. The first one I think was Johnson and the second house was Lawrence. They were both taken out when the toll road went through. And it seems to me the name was Johnson Street, but I'm not positive because the Johnson family lived there. And Mr. Johnson was connected with Worthmore Feed and Grain, which was sold out of the grain store there in West Auburn.
Right. Yeah. Do you remember the brick?
The Brickyard, yeah.
Yeah, they made brick that was on West Street.
It was on West Street, yeah.
They said they had, I was talking with a gentleman a while ago, and he said they had the finest sand that you could make for
Supposedly, yeah.
bricks and stuff there.
Yeah. I don't remember operating. I can remember the sheds where they'd wheel the carts out to cure, for the bricks to cure. And I remember the chimney that stood there.
Yeah, the chimney was down there where Stearns is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I say, I don't remember operating and making bricks, but I can remember the setup there. And there was a house there where we always referred to it as a brickyard house.
Is that right?
Different families lived in there. It was a rented piece of property.
Yeah.
At one time, maybe some of the owners of the original brickyard lived there, but
And we were talking railroad back in the beginning of this talk. Do you remember the switching station down on Hartscrabble Road?
Hartscrabble Road, yes, I remember that. I knew the Mills family quite well.
Did you?
Mm.
Yeah.
Could you tell us the connection with the Mills family in Webster Junction? Did they
Well,
live there?
yeah, they lived there. There was a house there that they lived in. I presume it belonged to the railroad. And he was the switch signal, well, he worked the signal tower and the switch operation. And
That would be the father, Bob and Jimmy Mills that run the radio place at Webster
yeah,
Square?
that would be their father that run that.
What
Nice family.
was the switching all about? What were they switching? Changing the direction of the track from?
Yeah, from the main line to the branch to send
The Webster.
the Webster line.
Okay, so they had.
There were also 3 tracks along there because they had a siding where they could, well, get one train by the other, you know, a switch.
Well, switches, yeah, okay. And when they switch it, they go to that other track, only one as far as Webster?
The branch track went down into Webster. As far as I know, that was the end of it.
Okay.
And that went out when the French River flooded a lot of the tracks, and I think it was 54 or 5.
Yeah.
That branch track went in around 1870. It wasn't with the original railroad track. It was,
Okay.
and around 1954 there was a terrible flood, and like I said, the French River down further took the track out, and it was never rebuilt because the other track that goes through Auburn ends up in the same
Down
place.
in the
and
same,
there wasn't enough business.
Serves Webster, yeah.
That one, that Ethier Pond Dam would go off Route 20?
Well, there was no dam there then, but
That's,
that's what why the dam was put in, to control floodwaters
I see.
down there at the
Yep.
Buffinville Dam.
Buffalo Dam?
Yeah, that's the one that was put in
Yeah, I know
to
that, yeah.
control
Sure.
the flow of the water down through the valley.
Cliff, do you remember the trolley that was over at West Street? Did it go that far in your lifetime? Where the
Yes.
boat ramp is there?
Right.
That was.
Yeah, the trolley line went through there. And prior to that, of course, on Southbridge Street, the trolley line went by the house where I was born and brought up.
Yeah.
And I can remember the trolleys running that line as well.
Did you have a ride on it or?
Yes, we did.
Really?
I was very small at that time. And, yeah.
Go to Worcester or?
They went to Worcester, went up, well, went by the house there. It went to Webster eventually.
Yeah.
And came through Oxford, through Auburn, and along Southbridge Street till you got down to where Meadow Street is. And followed Meadow Street up through Auburn Center.
Okay, that's the Auburn Center one.
Yeah, went through Auburn Center and down by the grain store,
Yeah,
Drury Square,
yeah.
and over the railroad bridge and up Hampton Street, down College Hill.
Wow.
That was the Webster line. And I remember that was the last of that line, because I can remember about the time I started school, that wasn't operating anymore.
Okay.
But the line over on across West Street, which was a Southbridge run, went for some time afterwards, because I can remember watching when there'd be an ice storm or something and the trolley would go on, all the fireworks from the short circuit between the trolley and the wire, which was loaded with ice.
Yeah.
Oh, Mr. Burgess, Bill Burgess told me that he went to Pinehurst Park as a child, which is on Pinehurst Ave, and he remembered having to get on the trolley over around where the mall is today, and go all the way to City Hall in Worcester, and get off and get on the other trolley and then go back to Pinehurst
To get to
Ave.
Pinehurst Ave,
Quite a roundabout trip.
Yeah, to get there. Wow, that's pretty interesting.
I don't know.
The trolley lines went out, well, I don't know, I wouldn't have any dates on that.
From what I believe, and I'm not positive, right around World War II, I think was the beginning of World War II was the end of the trolleys. They came through Auburn. First one, the Webster branch, was 1898, and the Worcester to Southbridge was 1902.
Oh, two.
By around 1927, the automobile had really cut down on their business.
Cut down, so they wouldn't pay to run them anymore. There was a waiting station at the corner of West Street and the tracks, which was sort of an open building, but it had a good roof on it, and maybe 12, 15 foot square that you could get in out of the weather and wait for the trolley.
All right.
Yeah.
Was it in your lifetime that the track that went by the Golden Pizza there, that was a local passenger service, or was that too far from you to know, too far from your farm to
It still runs a passenger train.
Yeah, but I mean, back then there were 5 or 6 stops right in
Yeah.
Auburn where if you wanted to go into Worcester,
Right,
you could get on and...
That was before my time. There was one down at Maywood Crossing and the one at Auburn Depot.
Stones Crossing.
Stones Crossing, yeah. They would stop and pick up local traffic.
And that was just pedestrian traffic? It wasn't-
Pretty much, yeah.
There was no cargo of any kind being switched there?
Those are
Different trains, yes.
Yeah.
It was also a long distance passenger service, but those were different
that was
trains
a
than the
local,
freight.
yeah.
Today, Providence and Worcester is the one that that runs the trains through
Trains,
there. But I don't think
yeah.
there's any passenger service
I don't,
through there now. I'm not
I
really
think
sure.
passenger trains go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when I was growing up, I remember the old Bud line going through there.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
there's still a passenger
Oh.
run over that line.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think from time to time. I know, and another thing they used to do in the fall when my mother was elderly and my son came along, she used to take my son on a foliage trip down there, get off Auburn Depot, and go down to it now,
Go
down
down.
there, and they'd show the leaves, you know.
Sure.
Was, and that wasn't maybe 20 years ago, they were doing this. So, yeah, so they're still using that type of thing. A little more recent history, back up on Prospect Street again, there was a talk a couple of years ago about putting a high school up there. And there was, those of us who lived in town for quite a long time realized that they didn't call that Granger Cliffs for
nothing.
for
another
nothing.
reason.
That was a pretty stony area, but it was also very wet up on there too.
Yeah, it's a wet hill, period.
Yeah,
And there is a spring in the middle of the land that they took with the intentions of building the school, which I don't know if it ever went dry. It was what we used as pasture land,
yeah.
and the cows could drink
Good
there.
thing out year round.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all summer long. I know my father put dynamite in there a couple times and opened it up a little more.
Is that right?
But Waterman Warren had the pasture where I live now, and he had more grazing land
Yeah.
than we did. So they run the cows together, and we supplied the water, he supplied the feed.
Oh, there you go. A little co-op.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And we were talking, Bud Stone mentioned that the other day, that his father used to pasture cows up there
Is that right?
in Waterman Warren's pasture, but I don't remember that
Yeah.
there was any cows other than ours and Waterman Warren's.
So obviously that was a pretty good idea not to put the high school there.
As far as I'm concerned, not so much because of the condition of the land, but because of crossing Route 20.
Yeah,
That to me was,
gonna be a dangerous situation.
yeah, was the biggest drawback for putting a school up there. But they needed so much land to get what they wanted, it didn't really make any sense.
No,
Because they originally, and look at the area they got now, they said that, something like 30 acres was what they needed.
yeah,
And they were taking 100
take 100
to get a 30 acre
Yeah,
area they could use.
got 30 good acres out of 100.
Out of 100, which
Yeah.
didn't make much sense, I don't think.
Do you have any dreams or any ideas that maybe they'd use that land again up Granger Cliffs area for picnic area?
I don't know, I hope so. An article I run across recently mentioned about the Department of Reservations and something or other
Yeah,
being in with that, because that was more or less started by, was it Homer Gage and, let's see, C.K. Smith and some others. In town, the interest in town was Eugene Parsons and Margaret Parsons
right,
and Phil Warren and
Right.
Alfreda Warren.
sure.
They were the ones that we had the most connection with.
Uh-huh.
Alfreda Warren came along later when she married Phil,
Yeah,
and but she was quite interested in the garden club.
Right.
Was involved in that.
they're getting that land for a picnic area.
Yes.
Yeah. But I understand that it was very heavily used for a number of years. They bused people out there from the city actually.
Oh, did they?
So that's the way I remember it. There's a plaque down at the library that I'd like to get up and bring to the museum here for.
Is that where the plaque ended up? I know it disappeared from up there.
Well,
in the ledges and,
eventually it had been shot at by people with guns and
yeah.
stuff, and then kind of destroyed. And knew the fellow that found it with a metal detector, and then he gave it to me because I'm into metal detecting, and I gave it to the library with the hopes that it would come back here. So I would like to see the
Good.
plaque.
That would be nice if it did.
Get the plaque up here. And,
I know without supervision, it's pretty hard to have a park of any sort nowadays, because they had picnic tables there and they were eventually used for firewood.
is that right?
Yeah, which was too bad.
Yeah.
And they had a trail that run off from Oxford Street, and a parking area down there where people could park. And in this article that I just ran across recently, it mentions that there was planned never would be any automobile roads
Yeah.
into the
Oh,
area.
the walking area.
Yeah, just a walking area.
That would be really nice. If
It would be. And that's something that I would like to see. The town took the land that was our pasture land, and, as to how it will be used, you wonder in the future.
Yeah.
And I think it would make a wonderful area for hiking and so
Sure.
on. And the town also owns land, you see, further south on that ridge, which runs almost to where the quarry was.
Is that right?
Yeah, and there's probably something like 18 acres in there
Uh-huh.
that the town owns.
Well, I hope we use it for good use.
I hope so. I hope.
Keep it as open space, I think,
Yeah.
that's what we kind of need.
There's so many people that feel that an alleyway between two buildings is open space, but I don't agree with
I
it.
agree with you. Is there anything else you'd like to add, anything that you've, comes to mind that you would like to bring up to it and talk about today?
I don't know, is there too much more? You have anything?
Yeah, I've got a question, something that you said a couple minutes ago, and you said that Bud Stone's father, I think Cliff Stone,
Cliff Stone,
was
yes.
his name, had a dairy farm, and we know his house and farm was where Dave and Linda Doherty live now, Packagug Street.
Yeah.
That would be at the central square end of Packagug Street. The thing that came to mind for me when you said that was, I'm sure that they didn't put the cattle into a car or a truck. Now, they must have had cattle going down the road to bring them to these pastures. Do you remember that?
Well, I can remember quite often, like Waterman Warren, if he had a cow that he was going to take from the farm, which was where Applebee's is now, up onto the hill, he'd usually tie the cow with a rope to the back of the wagon and drive
Drive
out.
it up.
And then,
Yeah. So they got- But I imagine they did a certain amount of herding of cows up through the
Yeah,
streets.
would you ever see like several cows going down the road and stop and
No, I can't say that.
No.
No. Because the farms were pretty much complete in themselves, like, you know, where the Krasowskis are now.
Yeah.
Those were three farms up there. There was Brooks's and Hyterians. In fact, there was two Hyterian families up there. They say from what I heard, they weren't related, but they were two families up there. And they were pretty much self-contained. They had pasture land enough so that there was no reason really to travel the roads with the cattle.
How about Baddies? Now, Baddies had quite a bit of land up.
Yeah, they had 18 acres there where Linden Lane is now and Fenwick Circle.
Was that a farm or?
No, there was a summer cottage there, and Jim Batty's father owned a store in Worcester, and they used it as a summer camp, and also they raised vegetables which they could sell in the store and so on.
He was a butcher, wasn't he?
He was a meat, yeah, he delivered meat around town.
Yeah.
Jim Baddy.
Jim Batty. Yeah, he had a meat truck.
He was my school bus driver
Oh, yeah.
when he retired.
After he retired from the meat business.
Well, thank you very much. It's a very interesting talk.
Well,
Thank you,
Yeah.
Cliff.
a lot of things I'll think of in the future.
Well, I'm sure you know what we probably will do is we'll do this again sometime and start it all over again. Thank you very much.
Good enough.